Well, thank you, David, for that wonderful introduction. I want to start off by saying it is so good to be here with you all. This is, as you all know, I grew up here, and so I see a lot of familiar faces. I could not come here without hugging about every person that I've seen, and so I've gotten a lot of hugs. We got a lot of warm welcomes, my wife and I, and so we're excited. But it's interesting that I am having a first-time experience here that you may be surprised by, because this is the first time that I've been asked to speak here since I've been a minister. You guys had Zaquan here before me, I believe, if I have that correct. No hard feelings. I get it. I understand. No, that's nothing on the eldership or the leadership here. It's a conflict of my schedule being a full-time firefighter. Every time I've been asked to speak, it's just been like, wow, you would pick the Sunday I'm working. So that's just the funny joke that I like to run. But it is very good to be here with you all to experience. And another kind of secondary thing is this is my first time doing a summer series that's not at the congregation I currently serve at. So if it's terrible, let me know, and I can work on it for hopefully next time I'm invited back here or somewhere else, whatever you guys want to do with that. Let me know if this is up to par with summer series standards of speaking. So I got the topic. David sent it out, the weakest, strongest man. And if you don't know by now, we're talking about the story of Samson. And I love this kind of oxymoron play on words here, because how can somebody be weakest and strongest? How does that work? A quote comes to me from a movie, actually. I make a lot of movie references, so I hope you guys are on your game. But Fantastic Four, when Reed Richards. Is it Reed Richards? No, I'm blanking out. Mr. Fantastic and Johnny Storm are having a conversation, and Johnny Storm refers to him as the world's dumbest smart guy. And it's like, oh, okay, that's pretty accurate. So we see this kind of a lot, and it's kind of a fun play on words. But this is a fun topic to kind of dive into. How can you be strong but still be weak? Well, the question lies in, how do we define strength? What is it that we use to define strength? When we go and talk about strength, we often go straight to physical, right? We often go straight to these acronyms up here. We go power, endurance, fortitude, all these things, all these physical attributes. If I were to ask you right now, I could take a poll and say, if you can choose between 3 superpowers, what would they be? Most of you are going to put super strength in that conversation. I mean, if you look at this up on the PowerPoint behind me, you see all these superheroes. All of those superheroes, most of them possess some form of superhuman strength. We look up to that. That's what we consider strong. Those are things, attributes that we want to have. If I walked into a boys' locker room and I said, hey, who's the strongest person here? I'm sure I'll get a lot of responses. I'll get a lot of people come up, oh, I'm the strongest. No, I'm the strongest, and all this kind of stuff. Well, how many push-ups can you do? How many of this can you do? All this stuff. But they don't even know the type of strength that I'm asking about. They don't know the type of strength that I'm talking about when I ask who is the strongest, because our mind automatically jumps to that, but we don't realize that there are other strengths other than physical. There are other qualities of strength that go beyond that of physical. When I think about this, one of my favorite kind of stories to talk about is the story of Hercules. And it kind of mirrors somewhat the story of Samson in some ways. But we get this story of this guy. He wants to get back to his father. He wants to be back on Mount Olympus. And he wants to show his father that he has true strength and he's a true hero. And he gets talked into giving his strength away by a woman. So there's a parallel there. To who we're going to talk about later, and he loses his strength, and he has this great redemption arc, and he gets back up to his dad after this, and his dad tells him a very valuable lesson. He tells him this. He says, a true hero isn't measured by the size of his strength, but by the strength of his heart. See, Hercules was always concerned with how he could be a true hero, how he can be stronger than the rest, how he can prove that he is strong and get back to be with his father and say, I did it, I'm a true hero, I have all this strength. And his dad's like, that's not what made you a hero in the first place. That's not what makes me a hero. That's not what makes anybody up here a hero. A true hero isn't measured by how strong his muscles are, how great he is physically, but how he's able to use what he's given physically in his heart. the true hero is measured by his heart. And we see this in biblical examples all of the time. We kind of see this in a ton of biblical examples, that God isn't concerned with physical appearance. God isn't concerned with people that are physically strong. Actually, it's kind of somewhat the opposite in a lot of cases. He rejects people who are physically strong, choosing to pick people that are weak so he can show his true strength and his true power, right? And so we get that. I mean, we look at the story of when he calls David, and they're bringing him in. Who do they call first to be picked for king? They call Saul. Why? Because he's towers above every person. This man is a man's man. He's strong. He's mighty. He's powerful. Look at him. David couldn't even put on his armor. But yet, that's not the person that God picks. Actually, it says this in 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 7. It says, "But the Lord said to Samuel, do not look at his appearance or in the height of stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." And so we see this. Later on, you guys are going to study in this summer series, Gideon, another example of God using someone who's truly weak. Gideon is the lowest man on the totem pole, the weakest man of his tribe, of his whole family, and God is able to use him to fulfill his purpose. And so we kind of see examples of this all throughout Scripture, and even more so, you look at the story of Jesus. Jesus was not a person of physical stature that you would have been like, wow, look at this guy. I want to follow him because he's just manly and good and powerful. No, Jesus was like a normal guy, like normal person, like every person that's here. But yet God is able, obviously, to use Jesus, to use him to fulfill his will and to fulfill his purpose. And so as we look at the story of Samson, keep that in mind, because we often look at Samson as a hero. And somewhat he has some heroic qualities, but he also has some fairly glaring weaknesses that we're kind of going to dive into a little bit tonight. And so if you want, we'll be in Judges, and we'll be reading a lot, so please be ready for that. So Samson had a good birth story. He has a typical kind of birth story of people in the Old Testament, and we'll get into that. Let's start reading. Judges chapter 13, it says, "And the people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. So the Lord gave them to the hand of the Philistines for 40 years. There was a man of Zorah, of the tribe of the Danites, whose name was Manoah. And his wife was barren and had no children. And the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, Behold, you are barren and have not borne children. But you shall conceive, bear a son. Therefore, be careful not to drink wine or strong drink. Eat nothing unclean. For behold, you shall conceive and bear a son. No razor shall come upon his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to save Israel from the hand of the Philistines." And so we get kind of a picture of the person that Samson is born to be, the person that Samson is supposed to be, that God wants him to be. And so he's born of a barren woman. He's born of a woman that was not supposed to have children. And what she does here is not typical of a woman who would have done that in the Old Testament. She says, "For the angel of the Lord has blessed me, I'm going to devote this child back to God." And so she devotes him to God using a special vow that they would have used. And we'll talk about that a little later. And she destines him, and God destines him to lead Israel out of the path, out of their oppression of the Philistines. And so you get that Samson would have known this growing up, right? Samson obviously would recall this story. He would know the kind of vow he's under and the things of this. If you would like, I'm going to give you a quick summary of the Nazarite vow, but this vow that he was born under is very special. But it's something that we kind of look at and we don't really understand. See, this vow, if you read in Numbers, I'm not going to read it because it's a lot of reading, and I have to get through a lot more other things. But this was something of a separation, right? This was a time that you would separate yourself and you would be under this vow. But it doesn't have a connotation of that you did this forever, right? This was something you vowed to God. You did it for a time period, and then you would kind of, be like, okay, I made this vow to God, and then you would end and you would do the rituals that would cause you to end your vow. And we'll get into why that's important later. But here are the cliff notes of the vow. No strong drink or juice from grapes, or even grapes in other forms, or raisins or anything like that. No razors to touch your head. And so we kind of saw how he was dedicated from birth to that, because that's one of the things that the angel of the Lord said to his mother. And then no going near dead bodies. This one was it's a little bit harder to to do. Like it says, even if your mother and father were to drop dead right in front of you, that would violate that vow. You would then have to go and cleanse yourself and do all of these practices in order to get back right and get back to your vow. And that's going to become important as well. And so just keep that in the back of your head. This is the vow that Samson is under. This is the vow that he's born under. And so this isn't something now that, like the other Nazarenes that would take this vow and say, how I'm going to do this for a set amount of time. No, Samson now, this is his life. This is what his life is supposed to be. And we see that he doesn't really understand this. He doesn't really live this life. He's not concerned with these things. So let's talk about and get into kind of his first glaring mistakes and the first things that he kind of does. Judges chapter 14. Getting ahead of myself. Chapter 14 starts this way. Samson went down to Timnah, and Timnah he saw one of the daughters of the Philistine. Came up and told his father and mother, I saw one of the daughters of the Philistines at Timnah. Now go get her for me as a wife. But the father and mother said to him, is there not a woman amongst the relatives or amongst the people that you may go take a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines? But Samson said to his father, go get her for me, for she is right in my eyes. His father and mother did not know that it was from the Lord he was seeking an opportunity against the Philistines. At that time, the Philistines ruled over Israel. So we kind of see his first kind of glimpse of how the type of person that he is, right? He goes and sees this woman, knowing that she's from the Philistines, and is like, hey, Dad, Mom, I like that girl. Go get her for me. His dad's like, Dad, Mom, like, wait, hold on. She's not of, like, is there not anyone better? Like, you're literally choosing the woman, the people that are oppressing us. You're choosing a woman from their like, why would, no, go get her for me. And it's like, okay, well, so now we're not listening to our parents. Okay, that's cool. I've been there before. It doesn't always turn out well. I'll just tell you that, right? My parents are here, so I kind of get in trouble again. And so first showing, right? He's not a person concerned with anything regarding his parents. He's not listening to them. Interesting line here. It says that they did not know that it was from the Lord. He was seeking the opportunity for the Philistines. It's an interesting line because this is saying it as if it's from Samson's perspective. But it's not. It's from God's perspective, right? Samson, he's not looking to use this advantage, because if he was, he probably would have did it in a different way, because marrying a woman of their people doesn't have any strategical advantage to him. And so the Lord is seeking an opportunity against the Philistines through Samson, through the things that Samson is going to do, through all of this that we're going to go through, and we'll see that later. So, reading on. After some days, he returned to take her. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Verse 8, then Samson went down with his father and mother to Timnah, and they came to the vineyards of Timnah. Behold, a young lion came roaring towards him, and the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him. Keep an eye on that note, that verse right there. The Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him. And although he had nothing in his hands, he tore the lion to pieces as one tears a young goat. But he did not tell his father or his mother what he had done. Then he went down and talked with the woman, and she was right in his eyes. After some days, he returned to take her, and he turned aside to see a carcass of the lion. And behold, a swarm of bees in the body of the lion and honey. He scraped it onto his hands and went on as eating it as he went. And he came to his father and mother and gave some to them, and they ate. But he did not tell them what he had done. He did not tell him that he scraped the honey from the carcass of the lion. So this is another kind of important piece of the puzzle here. A lot of argument of whether he violated his vow or not, right? There's a lot of discussion of whether this was a violation of his vow because it was a dead living thing, but I think that doesn't constitute, because it wasn't a dead person, it was an animal. But we can go back and forth into that, and we could talk about that, but that's not the point here. The point is that, first of all, he's already putting himself in jeopardy, because where does he go to get this woman? He walks through a vineyard. What was that thing about the Nazirite vow that was talking about, not eating the fruit of the vine and not partaking it of any matter? So you're going to walk through a vineyard. because that's smart, right? Because if I'm struggling with something, say if I had a problem with alcoholism, I'm not going to find myself working in a bar because that would be, right? That's what we do, right? That's how we rectify things. No, not at all, right? Samson's already kind of putting himself in a weird situation, and it doesn't say here, but somehow he gets separated from his parents. Somehow, right? Because his parents are walking with him, and then all of a sudden he defeats a lion, and then he says he doesn't tell them, so that means they weren't with him. Just an important kind of tidbit of information there. So this lion comes and rushes upon him. Spirit of the Lord rushes upon Samson. Now, we read that, and it's like, well, interesting. Is the Lord allowing, is he allowing these things to happen? And why is he allowing this to happen? Why? Because the Lord has a purpose for Samson still, right? Because we're going to see, although he keeps making mistakes, God is using those mistakes to show his true power. And so he rushes upon him, he destroys this lion, he beats it with his bare hands, has this great moment of strength, and doesn't tell his parents about it. Why is that, right? Is he guilty? Does he think that he violated his vow? He might have thought that. He might have thought, maybe I violated the vow by killing this lion, going back, eating the honey out of his carcass. I don't know if that's something I want to tell my parents, but yeah, he gives it to them. Yeah, he comes back, he's like, hey, I got this honey, and they're like, oh, nice. Yeah, I just kind of, saw it around, and I thought I'd give it to you, and they're like, yeah, good. He's like, glad they didn't ask where it was from. That would have been bad, right? Oh, man, right? And so they go on, reading on, right? Verse 10, his father went down to the woman and prepared a feast, for the young men used to do. And as soon as the people saw him, they brought 30 companies to be with him. And Samson said to them, let me put to you a riddle. If you can tell me what it is within 7 days of the feast and find out, then I will give you 30 garments and 30 changes of clothes. But if you cannot tell me what it is, then you give me 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes. And said to him, put your riddle to me, I want to hear it. So here we go. Samson showing he's kind of like a betting man. He's like all about this. And it's not a fair bet by any means. He hedges his bet so hard here, right? And because he knows nobody's going to know this riddle. Nobody can figure this out unless you were there, right? And so he tells him this. He says, out of the eater came something to eat, out of the strong something sweet. On day 3, they could not solve the riddle. On the 4th day, they said to Samson's wife, entice your husband. Tell me what the riddle is, lest we burn your father's house with fire. Have you invited us here to impoverish us? And Samson's wife wept over him and said, you only hate me. You do not love me. You have put the riddle to my people, and you have not told me what it is. He said to her, behold, I have not told my father or mother. Why shall I tell you? Why should I tell you? She wept over him 7 days that they feasted. The feast lasted that long. And the 7th day, he told her because she pressed him hard. Then she told the riddle to her people. And the men of the city said to him on the 7th day before the sun went down, what is sweeter than honey? What is stronger than a lion? And he said to them, if you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have found out my riddle. The Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him. He went down to Ashkelon and struck down 30 men and took their spoil and gave the garments to those who had told the riddle. In hot anger, he went back to his father's house, and Samson's wife was given to his companion who had been his best man. Lot to unpack here, right? Samson hedges his bet, says, you know what, this will be fun. I'm just going to get something out of these guys. I'll never see it coming. Then his wife gets involved, shows his weakness to women here. He says, I gave them this riddle. Why should I tell you? I didn't even tell my parents. She's like, come on, babe, please. And he's like, all right, if you say so. We all know, guys, we know how it is. We know how that goes. And so then after this, he gets mad that they solved his riddle. But notice, she's only concerned about it being unfair to her people, which, who are her people? The Philistines, the evil people who he's supposed to be delivering out of the hand, right? He has no concern with this. No, not yet have we seen any concern of Samson with fulfilling his duties to God. Not once yet, right? Have we seen that? But then all of a sudden, we want to say that it's awesome that now that he got his riddle broken, he goes up to Ashkelon. He strikes down 30 men. Spirit of the Lord rushes upon him again so that he can strike down these 30 men and fulfill his bet. But what does that do? What does striking down these men do for him? violates that vow that he was supposed to take, right? Not supposed to be near any dead bodies. Well, he just killed people, so there's no way that he fulfills it, but there's no way that he couldn't get around that. He's around dead bodies. What does he not do after this? He doesn't go and cleanse himself. He doesn't go make it right with God. He goes and he storms off because he's mad that his bet got broken. He's mad that the people figured him out, right? He's so mad. We'll talk about this or chapter 15. Reading on. Says, after some time at the wheat of harvest, Samson went to visit his wife with a young goat. He said, I will go into my wife in the chamber, but the father would not allow him to go in. And her father said, I really thought you utterly hated her, so I gave her to your companion. Is not her younger sister more beautiful than she? Please take her instead. And Samson said to them, this time I shall not be innocent regarding the Philistines when I do harm to them. So Samson went and took 300 foxtails and torches, and he turned them tail to tail and put the torch between each pair of tails. And when he had set fire to the torches, he let the foxes go into the standing grain and the Philistines, and set fire to the stacked grains and the standing grains as well as the olive orchards. Then the Philistines said, who has done this? And they said, Samson, the son-in-law of Timnite, because he has taken his wife and given her to his companion. And the Philistines came up and burned her and her father with fire. And Samson said to them, if this is what you do, I swear I will be avenged on you, and after that I will quit. And he struck them hip and thigh with great blow, and he went down and stayed in the cleft and rock of Edom. So what's going on here with Samson? First of all, let's notice this. He goes back, after storming off, he comes back to be with his wife. Not trying to be discreet here, but he doesn't care about actually, I haven't seen my wife in a while. No, he just goes to be with her, right? So we're already kind of seeing this is not a good thing that Samson's doing. He's just going because he wants to, be with his wife in that sense. And her father's like, hey, I thought you hated her, so I kind of gave her away. And Samson's like, oh, no, you didn't. And so this is his first kind of battle against the Philistines. But what does it take to get there? It doesn't take him saying, well, God is destined me to do this. I'm supposed to destroy you guys. I'm supposed to be a deliverer to my people. It takes, no, you messed with the woman that I love, in air quotes, I love, and so now I'm going to strike you. Violating the vow yet again by beating these people and by doing this. And notice what he says. He says, if this is what you do, I swear I will be avenged on you, and after that I will quit, right? After that, I'm going to quit. I'm not going to be down. I'm going to be done with your people. It's like, how is that possible? You're literally sent here to destroy these people. So you're saying, after I get my vengeance on them, God's vengeance doesn't matter to me. God's vengeance is not important. Wow, Samson, wow. So then, right, verse 9, the Philistines came up and encamped in Judea and gave me a raid on Lehi, and the man of Judah said, why, thank you, have you come against us? And they said, we have come up to you to bind Samson, to do to him as he did to us. Then 3,000 men went to Judah down to the cleft of the rock of Edom and said to Samson, do you know that the Philistines are rulers over us? What then is this you have done to us? And he said to them, as they did to me, so I have done to them. And they said, we have come to bind you that we may give you into the hand of the Philistines. And Samson said, swear to me that you will not attack me yourselves. Trying to be a good guy, right? Swear to me that you will not attack me yourselves. They said to him, no, we will bind you and give you into their hands. We will surely not kill you. So they bound him with 2 new ropes, brought him up from the rock. When they came to Lehi, the Philistines came shouting to meet him. Then the Spirit of the Lord, again, right, we see that, the Spirit of the Lord. Notice that every time that he goes up against people, the Spirit of the Lord is there. So we notice that his strength is not his own, right? Clearly, the strength is not his own. And yet, we'll see later, he starts to flaunt that strength as if it is his. And so we'll see kind of how that plays out for him later. Anyways, the Spirit of the Lord rushes upon him, and the ropes were in his arms became as flax and caught on fire. And the bonds melted off his hands, and he found a fresh jawbone of a donkey, put his hand to it, and took it and struck 1,000 men. And Samson said, with the jawbone of a donkey, heaps upon heaps, with the jawbone of a donkey have I struck down 1,000 men. And as soon as he finished speaking, he threw away the jawbone out of his hand, and that place was called Ramoth Lehi. And he was thirsty, and he called upon the Lord and said this. Listen to what he says here. You have granted this great salvation by my hand of your servant, and shall I now die of thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised? So he's like, oh man, I did this great thing, God, and now you're going to let me die? God's like, I recall that the only reason you're doing this is because of your own mistakes, your own vengeance. You have nothing, you are not doing any of this for me, Samson. How can you say? But God still has plans for him. So what does he do? God split open a hollow place at Lehi, and water came from it. He drank, and the spirit returned, and he revived. So God's still looking out for Samson. Through all of this, God is still looking out for Samson. And so what our takeaway is, yeah, sometimes we may make mistakes. Sometimes we're going to make some bonehead moves. Sometimes we're going to look out for ourselves and be selfish. But God is always looking out for us, just as God is always looking out for Samson. And then we get into kind of the meat and potatoes of Samson's story, the one that we all know and love. And I'm not trying to put a damper on Samson's name by any means, right? Obviously, this story is here for our learning. But sometimes as children, we learn that Samson is a hero. We talk about all these great things that he's done. We tell the stories of him doing these awesome things, but we highlight Samson and Delilah, but we don't talk about his true intentions with doing these things. How it is that he got into the situation that he is. Even in his death, which we'll talk about, he's not in the right place. He's not in a good place. And God is able to still use that to his advantage, which is nice. It's awesome. I don't want to be the person that God uses that all of my wrongdoings necessarily, and I don't have a redemption. I just die, and he used all of my weakness and didn't use any of my strength. That's just me. I don't know where you stand on that, but that's just me, right? So chapter 16, this is where we get into kind of the ending of our story of Samson here. First kind of instance here, it says this: Samson went into Gaza, and there was a prostitute, and he went into her. And the Gazites were told, Samson has come here. And they surrounded the place and set ambush for him all night at the gate of the city. They kept all night saying, let us wait till the light of morning, then we kill him. Samson lied till midnight. Midnight he arose, took the doors of the gate and the two posts, pulled them up bar for bar, and put them on the shoulders and carried them to the top of the hill that was in front of Hebron. So we get another instance, like Samson he's reckless. He just goes to the city, finds a prostitute, and is like, seems like a good idea. Why not? And then he gets found out here, and so he's found out. They're trying to get him, and he flaunts a little bit of strength. Like, oh, you guys waited all night for me? Well, here's the gates to your city. All right, cool. I'm just gonna walk away with them, and we'll do this. Samson is not the ideal role model here. Samson is not displaying these great strengths of power that God has given him. He's not showing that at all. He's just showing selfishness and arrogance and all of these things. So what happens? After this, he loved a woman in the valley whose name was Delilah. And the Lord, till the Philistines came up to her and said, seduce him and see where his great strength lies and by what means we may overpower him, that we may bind him to humble him. And we will each give you 1,100 pieces of silver. So Delilah said to Samson, please tell me where your great strength lies and how you might be bound to one for one that could subdue you. So here we go, Samson and Delilah, right? And so I'm going to summarize most of this story so we can get to kind of the real purpose in Samson's death. But he meets this woman, and this woman has no intention of being with him, right? It says that she's trying to sell him out for 1,100 pieces of silver. I'm not saying she's a gold digger, but hey, right? And so this woman has no interest in him at all. Like, she had no interest in what he's supposed, no interest. And interesting note here, why are the people are asking, hey, can you subdue Samson? How do they know that his weakness is women? He's proven it, right? They've been watching Samson. Samson's been doing all these things, and every time a woman gets involved, that's when he gets mad. That's when he starts angrily killing people, and they're like, oh, yeah, we got him now. Send Delilah in. Oh, yeah, she's cute. Oh, yeah, you got it, girl. I'll give you 1,100 pieces of silver. You do this for me. And she's like, okay. And so 3 times this same interaction happens. She's, hey, how do I subdue you? How is it? And the people are questioning his power because we can see Samson, it never says that Samson was this physical specimen. Bible never says that Samson was strong and people understood that strength. It was more of Samson was a regular guy, and then yet all of a sudden the Spirit of the Lord rushes upon him, and now he's like superhuman. And so people are they're perplexed. They're like, what is it? What can we do? And so this is how the hiring of Delilah comes about. And so 3 times the same exchange happens. Hey, how can I subdue you? And notice, Samson just lies to her. Samson says, well, if you do this, then I'll become as normal man. And why do you think that is that he lies? What would be the purpose of it? He's not lying because he is going to get found out and they're actually going to do something to him. He's lying to protect himself. He's lying because he wants to continue the lifestyle that he's living. If he tells her that God is giving the power, then one, she'll actually do it as proven, which we'll get into later. And then 2, it kind of says, well, I'm not really living the life that God has wanted me to live. And so if I told you, it kind of exposed me, and now you know, and then everybody's going to, this is kind of going to snowball, and it's not going to be good for me. So I'll just lie to you. It doesn't matter anyways. And so the first time he kind of gets bailed out. First time, and he doesn't learn from this. I don't know if it's just plain arrogance, stupidity, or Delilah looked that good. I don't get it. But he lies to her. So she comes and does what he says. She's like, okay, well, if you bind me like this, I'm going to, and then he wakes up and he's bound the way that she said. Like, if I'm Samson, I'm like, okay, well, fool me one time, shame on me, but it happens again. Same thing. Oh, Samson, well, how dare you? She pulls that card. How dare you? I love you, and you're gonna do me like this. What? Just tell me what it is. Okay. Lies to her again. Same thing happens. Hey, the Philistines are here. Oh, and he just breaks out of his chains. But he starts to get arrogant. The 3rd time he starts to get arrogant, he basically says, okay, I'll tell you. Because what's going to happen is you're going to bind me up this way. It's going to happen. And then I'm just going to get out of it like I always do. Well, God's like, okay, let's see you get out of this one. So he finally tells her. He finally says, okay, it's my hair. Right? I was born under this special vow. If my head gets shaved, I'll be like just a normal man. But he's thinking, no, God won't do that to me. It's been good all this time. Every time the Lord rushed upon me, we're good. Okay. So it happens. And when Delilah, it says verse 18, when Delilah saw that he had told her all of his heart, she sent and called the lords of the Philistines, saying, come up again, for he has told me with all his heart. Then the lords of the Philistines came and brought the money in their hands. She made him sleep on her knees, and she called him and had shave off his 7 locks of his head. Then she began to torment him, and strength left him. And she said, the Philistines are upon you, Samson. And he woke up from his sleep, said, I will go out, here it is, as other times that I've done, and shake myself free. But he did not know that the Lord had left him. This was the last straw for God. God said, you're on your own, buddy. The Philistines seized him, gouged his eyes, and brought him down to Gaza and bound him with bronze shackles. And he ground at the mill in the prison. But the hair of his head began to grow again after it had been shaved. So now they're embarrassing Samson. They're tormenting him. He has all these things. He's in prison. It looks very grim for Samson right now. And all because, he succumbed because of his actions. His actions finally caught up to him. So what happens at the end? What happens at the end of the story? We kind of know. I'm going to summarize because time is getting away from me here. But Samson is asked all of the people of the Philistines are here. All of the people, there's some 3,000 people, men and women, are there. And so Samson asked to be taken to the pillars. He's blind, he can't see. He's asked to be taken to the pillars. He feels upon the pillars, and he's like, okay, this is a support. If I push these, everything will crash down, and finally my torment will be over, and I will have fulfilled what the Lord's purpose for me is. But let's see what he says, because it's not as simple as that. It says, verse 28, then Samson called to the Lord and said, O Lord God, please remember me, and please strengthen me this once, O God, that I may be avenged on the Philistines for my own 2 eyes. Who's he concerned about here? He's concerned about himself yet again, right? He doesn't say, hey, God, please give me the strength one more time so I can fulfill your purpose for me, so I can fulfill what you had for me since birth, and I can actually deliver the Philistines, and I can actually fulfill what I'm supposed to be doing. No. God, please let me just make things right, and so I can tear down these walls and defeat these people. Nope. Oh, Lord God, please remember me and strengthen me only this once, oh God, that I may be avenged on the Philistines for my 2 eyes. That I may be avenged on the Philistines so that I can rectify what I have done and my agenda with the Philistines, not concerned with God whatsoever. But what does God do here, which is very powerful? He allows it. He strengthens Samson. Samson grasped the middle of the 2 pillars, and the whole house rested. He leaned with his weight against them, his right hand and his left hand on the other. Samson said, let me die with the Philistines. He bowed his head with all his strength, that the Lord gave him, with all his strength. And the whole house fell upon the Lord and upon the people who were in it. So the dead whom he killed at his death were more than those whom he had killed during his life. Right? So he killed more people in his death, his, again, selfish death, than he did the whole time that he was alive, which he had a pretty good amount of time to be doing what he's supposed to be doing, and yet he waits to the last minute, and even in the last minute, he's not doing it the right way. Then his brothers and all his family came down, took him and brought him and buried him between Zorah, Eshtaol, and the tomb of Manoah, his father, and he judged Israel for 20 years. Samson is this is the kind of the story of the book of Judges. There's a good judge, and then there's a really bad judge. Where do you think Samson falls on this scale here? Right? Samson's not a very great judge. Samson, terrible. I'll say it. Terrible judge. Terrible, but yet God is still able to use him. And so what's our point this evening? I'm not here to bash Samson. I'm not here to get and say, Samson does all this wrong. Samson, I'm not trying to tarnish Samson's name, but we have to realize that Samson was not a good person. But more importantly, we look at the story of Samson here, but really we should be looking at the story of God and what God is able to do in weakness. Because Samson shows a lot of weakness here. Samson shows some of the greatest weaknesses to a lot of things. His selfishness, his just reckless behavior with women, and his, I don't even know how to say it, but his just complete and utter defiance to what God has placed him to do. But it brings the point, these 2 things. God's idea of strength is different than our idea of strength. What God sees as strength, we may laugh upon, because God sees weakness as strength. God uses weakness, and through weakness, he shows his true strength. Every time that Samson messes up, every time that Samson is weak and in his low point, God says, well, this is where I'm going to shine. This is where I'm going to show you. And then despite all of our weakness, despite all of these things, God is still glorified in the end. God is always going to be glorified in the end. And so maybe you're that weak person. Maybe you're that weak person, and you're just day after day, God has shown you and said, hey, these are the things that you should be doing in this life. These are the things that I want you to do, and yet you've kind of defied him, and you've just gone away from those things. Maybe you know somebody who's in that position. Whatever the case may be, just know that God's true strength lies in your weakness. In your weakest times, whether you extend that weakness all the way to death like Samson and just die with the ship and never really resolve things with God in the right way, or you actually say, hey, I'm actually gonna not do that, and I'm gonna try to do right, and your purpose for me, I'm gonna fulfill the way that it's supposed to be so I can be in the right eyes. Whatever you choose to do, I hope it's the latter, but just know that God's glory is going to come out of it. And so whatever your situation you're in, maybe you're weak because life has just come down on you really hard. It hasn't been a defiance thing. It hasn't been something. It's just you've had this struggle, and life is it's all up in the way, and it's getting messed up or whatever. I'm here to tell you that even in that weakness, God can show true strength. And so if you need to be strengthened today, if you need anything, and if we can help you in any way, that I know the elders here are more than willing to pray with you, to be with you, and to encourage you and give you that strength back and that encouragement that God gives us. And so I implore you to come now as we stand and as we sing.